Chapter 15, Part 1 of A Serious Call to a Devout and Holy Life. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Marianne Spiegel. A Serious Call to a Devout and Holy Life by William Law. Chapter 15, Part 1. Chapter 15. Of chanting or singing of psalms in our private devotions, of the excellency and benefit of this kind of devotion, of the great effects it hath upon our hearts, of the means of performing it in the best manner. You have seen, in the foregoing chapter, what means and methods you are to use to raise and improve your devotion, how early you are to begin your prayers, and what is to be the subject of your first devotions in the morning. There is one thing still remaining that you must be required to observe, not only as fit and proper to be done, but as such as cannot be neglected without great prejudice to your devotions, and that is to begin all your prayers with a psalm. This is so right, is so beneficial to devotion, has so much effect upon our hearts, that it may be insisted upon as a common rule for all persons. I do not mean that you should read over a psalm, but that you should chant or sing one of those psalms, which we commonly call the reading psalms. For singing is as much the proper use of a psalm, as devout supplication is the proper use of a form of prayer, and a psalm only read is very much like a prayer that is only looked over. Now the method of chanting a psalm, such as is used in colleges, in the universities, and in some churches, is such as all persons are capable of. The change of the voice in thus chanting of a psalm is so small and natural that everybody is able to do it, and yet sufficient to raise and keep up the gladness of our hearts. You are, therefore, to consider this chanting of a psalm as a necessary beginning of your devotions, as something that is to awaken all that is good and holy within you, that is to call your spirits to their proper duty, to set you in your best posture towards heaven, and tune all the powers of your soul to worship and adoration. For there is nothing that so clears a way for your prayers, nothing that so disperses dullness of heart, nothing that so purifies the soul from poor and little passions, nothing that so opens heaven or carries your heart so near it, as these songs of praise. They create a sense and delight in God. They awaken holy desires. They teach you how to ask, and they prevail with God to give. They kindle a holy flame. They turn your heart into an altar, your prayers into incense, and carry them as a sweet-smelling savor to the throne of grace. The difference between singing and reading a psalm will easily be understood if you consider the difference between reading and singing a common song that you like. Whilst you only read it, you only like it, and that is all. But as soon as you sing it, then you enjoy it. You feel the delight of it. It has got hold of you. Your passions keep pace with it, and you feel the same spirit within you that seems to be in the words. If you were to tell a person that has such a song that he need not sing it, that it was sufficient to peruse it, he would wonder what you meant, and would think you as absurd as if you were to tell him that he should only look at his food to see whether it was good, but need not eat it. For a song of praise not sung is very like any other good thing not made use of. You will perhaps say that singing is a particular talent that belongs only to particular people, and that you have neither voice nor ear to make any music. If you had said that singing is a general talent, and that people differ in that as they do in all other things, you had said something much truer. For how vastly do people differ in the talent of thinking, which is not only common to all men, but seems to be the very essence of human nature. How readily do some people reason upon everything, and how hardly do others reason upon anything. How clearly do some people discourse upon the most abstruse matters, and how confusedly do others talk upon the plainest subjects. Yet no one desires to be excused from thought, or reason, or discourse, because he has not the talents, as some people have them. But it is full as just for a person to think himself excused from thinking upon God, from reasoning about his duty, or discoursing about the means of salvation, because he has not these talents in any fine degree. This is full as just as for a person to think himself excused from singing the praises of God, because he has not a fine ear or a musical voice. For as it is speaking, and not graceful speaking, that is a required part of prayer, as it is bowing, and not genteel bowing, that is a proper part of adoration, so it is singing, and not artful, fine singing, that is a required way of praising God. If a person was to forbear praying, because he had an odd tone in his voice, he would have as good an excuse as he has that forbears from singing psalms, because he has but little management of his voice. And as a man's speaking his prayers, throw in an odd tone, may yet sufficiently answer all ends of his own devotion, so a man's singing of a psalm, though not in a very musical way, may yet sufficiently answer all the ends of rejoicing in and praising God. Secondly, this objection might be of some weight, if you were desired to sing to entertain other people, but it is not to be admitted in the present case, where you are only required to sing the praises of God, as a part of your private devotion. If a person that has a very ill voice, and a bad way of speaking, was desired to be the mouth of a congregation, it would be a very proper excuse for him to say that he had not a voice, or a way of speaking, that was proper for prayer. But he would be very absurd, if, for the same reason, he should neglect his own private devotions. Now this is exactly the case of singing psalms. You may not have the talent of singing, so as to be able to entertain other people, and therefore it is reasonable to excuse yourself from it. But if for that reason you should excuse yourself from this way of praising God, you would be guilty of a great absurdity, because singing is no more required for the music that is made by it, than prayer is required for the fine words that it contains, but as it is the natural and proper expression of a heart rejoicing in God. Our blessed Saviour and his apostles sang a hymn, but it may reasonably be supposed that they rather rejoiced in God than made fine music. Do but so live, that your heart may truly rejoice in God, and it may feel itself affected with the praises of God, and then you will find that this state of your heart will neither want a voice nor ear to find a tune for a psalm. Every one, at some time or other, finds himself able to sing in some degree. There are some times and occasions of joy that make all people ready to express their sense of it in some sort of harmony. The joy that they feel forces them to let their voices have a part in it. He therefore that saith he wants a voice, or an ear, to sing a psalm, mistakes the case. He wants that spirit that really rejoices in God. The dullness is in his heart, and not in his ear. And when his heart feels a true joy in God, when it has a full relish of what is expressed in the psalms, he will find it very pleasant to make the motions of his voice express the motions of his heart. Singing, indeed, as it is improved into an art, as it signifies the running of the voice through such and such a compass of notes, and keeping time with a studied variety of changes, is not natural, nor the effect of any natural state of the mind. So in this sense it is not common to all people, any more than those antic and invented motions which make fine dancing are common to all people. But singing, as it signifies a motion of the voice suitable to the motions of the heart, and the changing of its tone according to the meaning of the words which we utter, is as natural and common to all men, as it is to speak high when they threaten in anger, or to speak low when they are dejected and ask for pardon. All men, therefore, are singers, in the same manner as all men think, speak, laugh, and lament. For singing is no more an invention than grief or joy are inventions. Every state of the heart naturally puts the body into some state that is suitable to it, and it is proper to show it to other people. If a man is angry or disdainful, no one need instruct him how to express these passions by the tone of his voice. The state of his heart disposes him to a proper use of his voice. If therefore there are but few singers of divine songs, if people want to be exhorted to this part of devotion, it is because there are but few whose hearts are raised to the height of piety, as to feel any motions of joy and delight in the praises of God. Imagine to yourself that you had been with Moses when he was led through the Red Sea, that you had seen the waters divide themselves, and stand up on a heap on both sides, that you had seen them held up till you had passed through, then let fall on your enemies. Do you think that you should then have wanted a voice or an ear to have sung with Moses, "The Lord is my strength and my song, He is become my salvation," etc.? Exodus chapter 15, verse 2. I know that your own heart tells you that all people must have been singers upon such an occasion. Let this therefore teach you that it is the heart that tunes a voice to sing the praises of God, and that if you cannot sing the same words now with joy, it is because you are not so affected with the salvation of the world by Jesus Christ as the Jews were, or you yourself would have been, with their deliverance at the Red Sea. That it is the state of the heart that disposes to rejoice in any particular kind of singing may be easily proved from a variety of observations upon human nature. An old debauchee may, according to the language of the world, have neither voice nor ear, if you only sing a psalm, or a song in praise of virtue to him. But yet, if in some easy tune you sing something that celebrates his former debauches, he will then, though he has no teeth in his head, show you that he has both a voice and an ear to join in such music. You then awaken his heart, and he as naturally sings to such words as he laughs when he is pleased. And this will be the case in every song that touches the heart. If you celebrate the ruling passion of any man's heart, you put his voice in tune to join with you. Thus, if you can find a man whose ruling temper is devotion, whose heart is full of God, his voice will rejoice in those songs of praise which glorify that God that is the joy of his heart, though he has neither voice nor ear for other music. Would you, therefore, delightfully perform this part of devotion, it is not so necessary to learn a tune or practice upon notes, as to prepare your heart. For, as our blessed Lord saith, out of the heart proceed evil thoughts, murders, etc. Matthew chapter 15, verse 9. So it is equally true that out of the heart proceeds holy joys, thanksgiving, and praise. If you can once say with David, "My heart is fixed, O God, my heart is fixed," it will be very easy and natural to add, as he did, "I will sing and give praise," etc. Psalm 57, verse 7. Secondly, let us now consider another reason for this kind of devotion. As singing is a natural effect of joy in the heart, so it also has a natural power of rendering the heart joyful. The soul and body are so united that they have each of them power over one another in their actions. Certain thoughts and sentiments in the soul produce such and such motions and actions in the body, and, on the other hand, certain motions and actions of the body have the same power of raising such and such thoughts and sentiments in the soul. So that, as singing is the natural effect of joy in the mind, so it is as truly a natural cause of raising joy in the mind. As devotion of the heart naturally breaks out into outward acts of prayer, so outward acts of prayer are natural means of raising the devotion of the heart. It is thus in all states and tempers of the mind, as the inward state of the mind produces outward actions suitable to it, so those outward actions have the like power of raising an inward state of mind suitable to them. As anger produces angry words, so angry words increase anger. So that if we barely consider human nature, we shall find that singing or chanting the Psalms is as proper and necessary to raise our hearts to a delight in God, as prayer is proper and necessary to excite in us the spirit of devotion. Every reason for one is in all respects as strong a reason for the other. If, therefore, you would know the reason and necessity of singing psalms, you must consider the reason and necessity of praising and rejoicing in God. Because singing of psalms is as much the true exercise and support of the spirit of thanksgiving, as prayer is the true exercise and support of the spirit of devotion. And you may as well think that you can be devout as you ought, without the use of prayer, as that you can rejoice in God as you ought without the practice of singing psalms, because this singing is as much the natural language of prayer and thanksgiving as prayer is the natural language of devotion. The union of soul and body is not a mixture of their substances, as we see bodies united and mixed together, but consists solely in the mutual power that they have of acting upon one another. If two persons were in such a state of dependence upon one another that neither of them could act, or move, or think, or feel, or suffer, or desire anything without putting the other into the same condition, one might properly say that they were in a state of strict union, although their substances were not united together. Now this is the union of soul and body. The substance of the one cannot be mixed or united with the other, but they are held together in such a state of union that all the actions and sufferings of the one are at the same time the actions and sufferings of the other. The soul has no thought or passion, but the body is concerned in it. The body has no action or motion, but what in some degree affects the soul. Now as it is the sole will of God, that is the very reason and cause of all the powers and effects which you see in the world, as the sun gives light and heat, not because it has any natural power of doing so, as it is fixed in a certain place, and other bodies moving about it, not because it is in the nature of the sun to stand still, and in the nature of other bodies to move about it, but merely because it is the will of God that they should be in such a state. As the eye is the organ or instrument of seeing, not because the skins and coats and humours of the eye have a natural power of giving sight. As the ears are the organs or instruments of hearing, not because the make of the ear has any natural power over sounds, but merely because it is the will of God that seeing and hearing should be thus received. So in like manner, it is the sole will of God, and not the nature of a human soul or body, that is the cause of this union betwixt the soul and the body. Now if you rightly apprehend this short account of the union of the soul and body, you will see a great deal into the reason and necessity of all the outward parts of religion. This union of our souls and bodies is the reason both why we have so little and so much power over ourselves. It is owing to this union that we have so little power over our souls. For as we cannot prevent the effects of external objects upon our bodies, as we cannot command outward causes, so we cannot always command the inward state of our minds, because, as outward objects act upon our bodies without our leave, so our bodies act upon our minds by the laws of the union of the soul and the body, and thus you see it is owing to this union that we have so little power over ourselves. On the other hand, it is owing to this union that we have so much power over ourselves. For as our souls, in a great measure, depend upon our bodies, and as we have great power over our bodies, as we can command our outward actions, and oblige ourselves to such habits of life as naturally produce habits in the soul, as we can mortify our bodies and remove ourselves from objects that inflame our passions, so we have a great power over the inward state of our souls. Again, as we are masters of our outward actions, as we can force ourselves to outward acts of reading, praying, singing, and the like, and as all these bodily actions have an effect upon the soul, as they naturally tend to form such and such tempers in our hearts, so by being masters of these outward bodily actions, we have great power over the inward state of the heart, and thus it is owing to this union that we have so much power over ourselves. Now from this you may also see the necessity and benefit of singing psalms, and of all the outward acts of religion. For if the body has so much power over the soul, it is certain that all such bodily actions as affect the soul are of great weight in religion. Not as if there was any true worship or piety in the actions themselves, but because they are proper to raise and support that spirit which is the true worship of God. Though therefore the seat of religion is in the heart, yet since our bodies have a power over our hearts, since outward actions both proceed from and enter into the heart, it is plain that outward actions have a great power over that religion which is seated in the heart. We are therefore as well to use outward helps as inward meditation in order to beget and fix habits of piety in our hearts. This doctrine may be easily carried too far, For by calling in too many outward means of worship, it may degenerate into superstition, as, on the other hand, some have fallen into the contrary extreme. For, because religion is justly placed in the heart, some have pursued that notion so far as to renounce vocal prayer and other outward acts of worship, and have resolved all religion into a quietism or mystic intercourses with God in silence. Now these are two extremes equally prejudicial to true religion, and ought not to be objected either against internal or external worship. As you ought not to say that I encourage that quietism by placing religion in the heart, so neither ought you to say that I encourage superstition by showing the benefit of outward acts of worship. For since we are neither all soul nor all body, seeing none of our actions are either separately of the soul or separately of the body, seeing that we have no habits but such as are produced by the actions both of our souls and bodies, it is certain that if we would arrive at habits of devotion or delight in God, we must not only meditate and exercise our souls, but we must practice and exercise our bodies to all such outward actions as are conformable to these inward tempers. If we would truly prostrate our souls before God, we must use our bodies to postures of lowliness. If we desire true fervours of devotion, we must make prayer the frequent labour of our lips. If we would banish all pride and passion from our hearts, we must force ourselves to all outward actions of patience and meekness. If we would feel inward motions of joy and delight in God, we must practice all the outward acts of it, and make our voices call upon our hearts. Now, therefore, you may plainly see the reason and necessity of singing of psalms. It is because outward actions are necessary to support inward tempers, and therefore the outward act of joy is necessary to raise and support the inward joy of the mind. If any people were to leave off prayer, because they seldom find the motions of their heart answering the words which they speak, you would charge them with great absurdity. You would think it very reasonable that they should continue their prayers, and be strict in observing all times of prayer, as the most likely means of removing the dullness and indevotion of their hearts. Now this is very much the case as to singing of psalms. People often sing without finding any inward joy suitable to the words which they speak. Therefore they are careless of it, or wholly neglect it, not considering that they act as absurdly as he that should neglect prayer, because his heart was not enough affected with it. For it is certain that this singing is as much the natural means of raising emotions of joy in the mind, as prayer is the natural means of raising devotion. I have been the longer upon this head, because of its great importance to true religion. For there is no state of mind so holy, so excellent, and so truly perfect as that of thankfulness to God, and consequently nothing is of more importance in religion than that which exercises and improves this habit of mind. End of chapter 15, part 1.